From Mountain Home to Raft River, we've got all the District 4 analysis you'll need to know. This is the Magic Valley Prepcast with Scott Burton.
That's right. It's another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything in District 4. Brandon Baney alongside Scott Burton. We took last week off because of the Thanksgiving holiday, and Scott, you look like you're still in holiday mode.
I'm just actually trying to rep a little street cred, Brandon. I feel like I'm a little short these days.
Yeah, well, for those of you that are watching the video on IdahoSports.com, you can see Scott's finest Jerome Tigers ball cap, worn backwards, of course, aviator sunglasses, because, you know, the bright lights of his office. You know, honestly, you've got that portrait of Coach K on the wall back there. If I had to stare at that thing every day, I think I'd go blind as well. So,
well, we have a problem with Coach K. The gloves are off, Brandon.
I don't know if you heard or not this year. It's kind of been underreported, but this is his final season.
Yeah. I heard that through the grapevine. Yeah, and then he goes and beats Gonzaga. And did you watch that game?
Oh yeah, that was an epic game.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of are, and I'm a Duke fan. I've always been a Duke fan ever since I was a little kid. So, you know, you got to have Coach K go out as a champion on his final year. It's just only fitting for best college coach ever. Yeah. One of the best.
And they've got a great freshman, Paolo Banchero, who looks awesome. And I'm a UCLA fan, so it was made me sick to watch Gonzaga defeat UCLA by 20 and then watch Duke turn around and beat Gonzaga. So.
Yeah, UCLA didn't put up much of a fight to claim a number 2 spot, did they?
No, they sure didn't. So that's all right. They'll go back to the lying low like they do, and we'll just get hot at March Madness again.
That's all that matters. I mean, that's the thing about basketball versus football in college is, you know, drop a few here and there in college, make the tournament, get a good seed, make a run, get hot. And college football is a whole different story. I mean, we've seen the shakeups already with Michigan's big win.
Yes.
So
it's been a season of chaos in college football as well. Well, we officially turned to the page. We're done with the fall sports season, and you talked about in basketball how really it's all about momentum at the right time. And this is going to segue perfectly into what we want to do this week. We are going to preview what's going on in girls basketball in the Magic Valley. Now, most teams already have played 3-4 games. So we've got an idea at least of who's looking good out of the gates. And of course, all of our girls basketball previews are up on our website, IdahoSports.com. And we're working on the boys basketball previews right now. Hopefully by the start of next week, we will have every team up on the site for boys basketball as well. And so it's funny because momentum is a strange thing. And last year, Burley got to state, had to play Middleton, a team that hadn't lost all year, but Burley was playing its best basketball of the season at state, knocked out Middleton, and really that kind of caused a big tidal wave through the 4A state girls basketball tournament a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it did. And when you are knocking out the favorite to win it all, then it's like the floodgates open. And it's amazing what it does to everybody else in that ripple effect, because now everybody has a fair shot at winning. You know, you took Goliath down, and now it's like everybody's got a chance. Everybody's more excited, knowing that they actually have a chance to win this thing. And that was Burley last year.
The Blackfoot girls ended up winning the 4A title last year. They had to win the play-in game just to get to state. And then they ended up.
Yeah, and you talk about getting hot at the right time. You know, that's exactly what happened to Blackfoot. And, you know, we see that in sports all the time. It's not always about the best team in these types of formats. It's just about sometimes who gets hot, who can survive injuries, you know. And, I mean, we've seen it in professional sports. We've seen it in college sports. I mean, I remember the San Francisco Giants winning World Series after World Series as a wild card coming in, you know. And we've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in college sports, and we see it in high school sports too. It's are you hot at the right time?
So this is our girls basketball preview here on the Magic Valley Prepcast, and that's where we want to start, is with the Burley Bobcats, because
is that your way of reminding me to stay out of the professional sports arena?
No, I like when you can tie it into all of your favorite teams that only you care about.
Yeah, it's all about me, and it's all about me.
That's
Let's
right.
not forget that.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely got that Hollywood persona going on today. So.
Okay, all right. I'll segue with you.
Yeah. Okay. So Burley is where we want to start this conversation because they are the overwhelming favorites this year. They've got Amari Whiting, who is committed to Oregon, which, by the way, is a top 10 program right now in women's college basketball. Scott, you've been in the Magic Valley a long time. Has there been a basketball player that has come through? It's almost like with Colston Loveland in football for Gooding this year. There's going to be a lot of people wanting to tune in to Burley and Amari Whiting specifically.
Yeah, Amari Whiting is, I mean, she is just one of those special talents that comes along. Last night, she put up 25 points, 16 boards in a blowout win. So, I mean, it wasn't even like she was needed on the floor, but that's another day at the office for her. And, I mean, she is just a gamer. I mean, she's got all three facets of the game. She can dribble, pass, shoot. And, she's quick. She can play some defense. I mean, this kid is really, something special, and it'd be fun to watch her as how she goes, because I mean, she's only a junior, so she's going to have another year of getting better, and physically she's got the build, I mean, she's tall for a girl, but she's a tall guard. She can handle the basketball, but she's not one of those selfish players that is getting up 35 shots a game, and as she goes, Burley goes. And if she can get everybody involved, Burley will remain undefeated. They're undefeated as we speak now.
Yeah, 5-0 overall, 2-0 early on in the Great Basin Conference. So do you ever remember a player coming through on the girls' side that could compare to this?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I don't know exactly where Amari's going to wind up as far as when she graduates, but there have been some players that have come through. Aubrey Callan is one that came out of Jerome in the mid 2000s that really got a lot of attention. Claire Bodensteiner out of Minico, and she ended up going to Stanford, I believe. And so there's been some, but there hasn't been many. Let's put it that way. And Amari is definitely one of them.
Aubrey Callan is the new head coach at Highland this year.
Yes.
Your head coach.
Yeah. Former player of mine. I was coaching girls at the time when she was coming through.
Okay. So I've got a new ally when we need to vent about Scott Burton.
Yeah, you do. And you have a laundry list of allies for that, Brandon.
I don't have to look too far, right?
No, you don't.
So if Burley is the favorite, who's the second favorite? Mountain Home got the other spot to state last year. They look good out of the gate, 4-2 overall. They're also 2-0 in the league. But what do you think?
Mountain Home is going to be the one that's going to push Burley. I think, they've got size, and that's one thing you can't coach in girls basketball is Mountain Home's got some size, and they've got a good point guard, and that's the coach's kid. Coach Keener's kid, and she's quite a player herself. I mean, we're not talking Amari Whiting yet, but she's the one that controls everything for Mountain Home. But the size of Mountain Home is really going to give people some fits, because Mountain Home is going to get you into paint. And I've been calling state tournaments for a long time, and I'll tell you, the teams that win it all are the teams that score in the paint. I mean, you can have the best guard line in the world, but if you don't score close to the basket, the chances of you winning ball games, especially when you start getting into foreign gyms at state and whatnot, I mean, it decreases your chances big time. And Mountain Home is the one team that can get it done in the paint.
Yeah, we saw that last year with Blackfoot. They had Hadley Humphreys down low, double machine in the paint. So I agree with that point totally. So Burley looks good. Mountain Home looks good. Madeline Keener, the point guard for Mountain Home. Other players we want to keep an eye on, Carly Latta from Minico. She was just a freshman last year, and I actually broadcasted her first high school game. They were at Idaho Falls. They were playing the Tigers in a non-conference game, and she looked really fluid as a freshman. So I'm excited to see what she can do in her sophomore year. Oh,
yeah, no question about it. Carly Latta is going to be the real deal. I mean, she already is the real deal as a sophomore this year. She's going to be serving a role just like Amari is for Burley, just like Keener is for Mountain Home. She's going to be the one that's doing that in Minico. And it's funny because you look at this conference. And it's really those three teams. And then I think you get a little drop off, but those three top teams have got something in common. They've got solid point guards that are controlling the show. And in girls basketball, sometimes that's a hard thing to develop, but those three teams right there have got floor generals.
Yep. Minico was picked third in the preseason coaches poll. Twin Falls was picked fourth. We talked about the state volleyball champs, state soccer champs. A lot of those athletes are going to be on the basketball court. Probably the player to watch for is, I knew her as Kaylin Bailey, but Chowder Bailey. That's her unofficial nickname now, and that's what's listed in our preview. Chowder Bailey from Twin.
Chowder Bailey. Yeah. Twin's going to be one of those teams that is going to get better. They were young last year, under head coach Nancy Jones, who has since retired and has turned the reins over to Micah Maya. And he's going to have a really good crop of young kids coming in for the next couple of years. So Twin, if they mature, it's going to be Twin's maturity that's going to get it done, because they definitely have some talent, but they're going to have to mature a little bit in order to compete with Burley, Mountain Home, and Minico.
Jerome was picked fifth. I know that the Tigers lost a lot from last year's team.
Whew. They are young. I mean, Coach Musgrave does a great job with them, but he's starting 2 freshmen, a sophomore, a junior, and 1 senior. And there's only 3 seniors on the team, and one of them that gets significant minutes. So I mean, this is going to be one of those years for these young kids just to get experience and see if they can mature over the next couple of years.
Wood River was picked to finish 7th there, 0-4 right now. And then Canyon Ridge was picked to finish 6th. The Riverhawks are 0-2 in the conference, but those are their only 2 losses. They're actually 4-2 overall. They've got a lot of good wins. They beat Pocatello, Kimberly, Buell, and Emmett. Their 2 losses just happened to come to Burley and Minico, 2 teams that we think are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, the 2 losses they have are to quality teams. And, Canyon Ridge right now maybe beating the teams that they should beat and losing to the teams that are better than they are. So it's hard to gauge right now until we can get into this conference a little bit more. But, for the girls in this 4A, I mean, I'm looking at 3.5 solid teams in this Great Basin, which is crazy because you just don't get that volume in girls basketball a lot of the time. And it's not the volume in the comparison or the commonality that a lot of them have is like, well, who's the worst team? Well, you've got 3 really good ones, and Twin, if they can get it together, you may have 4 fighting for 2 spots. So I'm pretty excited to see how this conference shakes out.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Canyon Ridge has a big game against Jerome on Thursday. That could be an early decider. We talked about in football, the teams that were kind of considered in the bottom half of the standings all played each other early and kind of sorted it out amongst themselves early on. Same thing could happen in basketball.
Yeah. Yep, it definitely could. So once these teams, especially when those top 3 start playing each other, I think we're going to get some good measuring sticks.
Yep. Let's move on to the 3A ranks, the SCIC, the Sawtooth Central Idaho Conference. Coming into the season, 2 things are known. 1, Kimberly is the overwhelming favorite, and 2, beyond that, it's anyone's guess. Officially, Gooding was picked 2nd in the preseason coaches poll. But Kimberly, despite the preseason hype, just a 2-3 record right now, but they've played up, right? They've lost to Canyon Ridge. They also lost to Jerome, but they also have defeated Wood River. And they have a tight loss to a Snake River team that was at state last year as well. So Kimberly has challenged themselves with the schedule early. So you can't just look at their record and put everything into that. But Kimberly has 3 great athletes to build around in Reese Gary, who, by the way, is an excellent golfer in the spring. She's a great golfer. And then also Kelsey Stanger and Mikkel Wright. So the question is, kind of like in football this year, Kimberly came in as the overwhelming favorite based on the athletes they had, but can they stay healthy enough?
Well, and that's always going to be the thing too, because when you're returning Gary and Ryder, both all conference, for Kimberly, you can't afford to lose anybody. And that's really been kind of the problem in girls basketball more so than boys basketball is, sometimes guys can put 4 dudes on the floor that can play. In girls basketball, you need 2 or 3 that can play. And if you can do that, you are going to be competitive in a lot of games, but if one of those 2 or 3 go down, then you really, really struggle because the depth doesn't always seem to be there on the girls' side of things. And so talking about those big 3 for Kimberly, yeah, they need to stay healthy for sure.
And then it's health is even more paramount for the other 3 teams in the league because Gooding, Filer, and Buell all have a star player or a player they can lean on night in, night out. But the question is, can players 2, 3, and 4 also elevate their game? Alex Rowe at Gooding, Lexi Monson at Filer might be the best all-around athlete in terms of what she brings in multiple sports. And then Trinity Tverdi from Buell. I don't know if I said that right or not.
Yeah, Tverdi.
Okay, that's a hard one. For Buell, the other interesting wrinkle in the 3A ranks this year is a new coach at Filer. Micah Maya, you mentioned, is the new coach at Twin Falls. He was previously at Filer, so Filer now has Clayton Nebeker to lead that program. Yeah,
Nebeker's a familiar name in Magic Valley basketball. I mean, there's a whole platoon of Nebekers running around Southern Idaho, and they're all involved in basketball. So, at least, I mean, they did hire well. Losing Amaya is a huge hit. But, they did replace him with a guy that does know basketball. So, Filer, they should be just fine.
Right now, Filer is 2-3, just like Kimberly, but they've also challenged themselves with a pretty rigorous schedule. They've already played Shelley, which is a really good 4A team. They've played Coal Valley Christian, which is a 2A team that's expected to contend for the 2A state title. They only lost by 5. They beat Jerome. And then how about this? They only lost to Stank River by 4, 74-70. That's a high point total for an early season girls basketball game.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and what happens in basketball is you start having these, comparisons. Kimberly and Filer both have played Jerome, and Kimberly lost, Filer won, and Filer won pretty handily. But they're, predicted to finish 2 spots below Kimberly. So this is where it all starts to shake out a little bit because we always play that game, the common opponent game. And, Gooding may have something to say about all this before things are done anyway, with Rowe kind of leading the charge for the Senators.
Yeah, Gooding 4-1 as we're recording this. And here's the thing. As we're talking about this, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, December 1st. So by the time you're listening to this, a team that's 4-1 might be 5-1. They might be 6-1. They might be 4-2. So if what we're hearing doesn't jive with what just keep checking IdahoSports.com. Honestly, it's the first thing I do every morning. It's what you should do also because we've got all the scores from the night before, updated standings. Just check it every single morning so you've got the complete picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no better place to go to stay, kind of abreast of what's happening because in basketball season, it's on the daily. Football, we wait till the weekend. Basketball, man, it is a go, go, go.
Yes, no stopping. And Gooding hasn't really stopped much either this year in girls hoops, 4-1 overall to start the year. Only loss was to Dietrich, but Dietrich's going to be a pretty good team, and we'll talk about them in just a second. First, we've got to get to what's going on in the 2A ranks. This is the league that's wide open when you look at the Canyon Conference. Valley, Declo, Wendell. We sent out those preseason questionnaires. They all tied for first in the coaches poll.
Yeah, well, that tells you nobody knows anything about what's going on there because I don't even know what to tell you. I memean, you've got some players that you need to keep an eye on. I mean, let's start with Declo. Cadence Spencer and Macy Larson and those two. And, if they can stay healthy, then Declo may have a shot, and Scott out of Wendell and even Lewis out of Valley. I mean, there's names there to keep an eye on, but we'll see.
And here's the weird part or one of the quirks of having a 3-team conference last year. Declo finished first in the conference a year ago with a 3-1 mark in the league, but they had the worst overall record. They were 7-16 otherwise.
Right.
Valley went 1-3 in league play, which was last, but they had the best overall record at 18-8.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we seen stuff like that happen, where teams have really had awesome years, but their losses have come in the conference tournament a lot of the times, and they don't even get to state. So we see that a lot in these 3-team conferences. Every loss is important.
Yes. So Valley went 18-8 overall, and even though they were 1-3 in conference, they did end up winning districts and getting to state. They went 2-0. I would give the early nod to Valley, and they're off to a good start. They're 3-2. Their losses were to Dietrich and Raft River, but otherwise they have wins over Hanson, Glens Ferry, and Shoshone. So kind of trying to figure out where they're at. And that's the thing in a 3-team conference. You have plenty of time to figure out, what kind of team you are.
Yeah, you do. And because a lot of your schedule is non-conference, so yeah, you get to grow and you get to mature and find out kind of what team you're going to be. And then hopefully win those conference games, because those now are a lot more important.
Yeah, Valley will find out a lot about itself this weekend when they travel to Cary for the Cary Holiday Tournament. Just a little 4-team tournament with Cary and Mackey and somebody else, little 4-team meetup. But it's going to be good competition because we know how good Cary is this year. So let's talk about the 1A D1 ranks next. We'll save Cary and Dietrich and all of them for last. The 1A D1 ranks, again, a tie for first place in the coaches poll. Half the coaches said Oakley is the favorite. The other half said Murtaugh. Looks like it's going to be a fun race.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. Todd Jensen out of Murtaugh has been around the game for a long time, and he's got, I guess, a leg up on a lot of things. He's got 3 solid players too to everybody to keep an eye on. And we're talking about Stoker, Jensen, and Zavala. And at that level, you get 3 players on the floor that can play. I mean, that at the 1A level, that's huge. And so, yeah, I think, Murtaugh's definitely going to be a front runner. I mean, you look at Oakley, they've got a couple of players as well with Jones and Bedke and Payton that can also do some damage. So I'm kind of interested to see how this conference, as small as it is, shakes out. Murtaugh's coming back with a 19-6 record from last year. So they're kind of riding a little wave of success and knowing how to win. I don't know. What do you think?
So I think Murtaugh doesn't just want to win the conference this year. They want to get to state and make some noise. They weren't really able to do that last year. So they're ready to take that next step. And Todd Jensen, like you said, has been around the game a long time. I think they've got the players to do it. Oakley is interesting. Oakley really struggled a year ago, and I think the one key player that could swing the entire conference is Oakley's point guard, Hope Payton. She missed all of last year with an ACL injury, and she's back to run the point for an Oakley team that I think is going to be pretty good. Hope Payton plays point guard, and Matt Payton is the head coach at Oakley. But you also have Raft River lurking on the horizon. They're undefeated at 3-0. Raft River can never be counted out. And even Lighthouse Christian, right? They've got a great girls basketball tradition, and they're breaking in a new coach this year in Paige Vickery. So I think there's a lot that could still be decided in this conference. It's going to be a fun race.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. Speaking of Coach Vickery, I coached with her. She used to coach here at Jerome with me when I was running the girls program, and she's going to be a great asset for Lighthouse to build on. So yeah, like you said, I'm interested to see where those 3, 4, and 5 teams shake out with the likes of Murtaugh, Oakley, and maybe even Raft River.
And the early standings bear that out, right? Raft River's 3-0, Oakley is 2-0, Lighthouse and Murtaugh both 2-1. It's going to be pretty good conference.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's going to be fun. And like we said, it's a big conference, six teamer, and so you're going to see up and down that leaderboard all season. It's going to be fun.
All right, 1A D2 Sawtooth Conference. There's a big void because the last 3 years it has been all about Kylie Wood and the Cary Panthers, right? Kylie Wood is the all-time leading scorer in Cary history. She is the record holder for most points in the game, most three-pointers in the game for Cary girls basketball. She's gone now. She's playing college basketball, I think, in Minnesota somewhere. So it's kind of left this void and this opening. in terms of not only which team will step up and take that top position, but also which individual player could take over the league and win the conference player of the year. So this is going to be an interesting league as well.
Yeah, I mean, Carey's going to have to look in a couple of different directions now for some leadership, and they've kind of targeted Park and Vargas to do that for them. But, the conference has spoken, and they don't see Carey repeating without their star player anymore. They kind of feel that maybe Richfield is the team to beat this year in that conference. So, yeah, we'll be interested to see what happens, because Richfield does, they've got, Hendren and Truman that are going to be the leaders of that team, and they feel that they're mature enough and they're ready to lead this conference and keep everybody in second place.
Richfield is a team that so this is a conference that sent 3 teams to state last year: Carey, Richfield, and Camas County. And for Camas County, it was like their second appearance at state ever. The only other time being like 2001 or 2002, something like that. So Richfield got to state last year by winning the play-in game and upsetting a Garden Valley team that I think a lot of people assumed would just steamroll over Richfield. Richfield last year wasn't pretty on offense, but man, could they defend. And it looks like they've got all the pieces together again to be a really strong defensive team. If you look at their 4-2 start to the season for Richfield, look at what they've allowed so far. 13 points in a win over Wendell, 29 points in a loss to Oakley, 16 points in a win over Camas, 23 points in a win over Rimrock, 15. I mean, the only 2 games where anybody's gotten close to 40 was Rockland, which they lost 38-15, and Dietrich, which won a tight one 40-38. So if Richfield can defend like this, just like they did last year, they're in every single game, I think.
No, I agree. And it does start on the defensive side of things. You ask any coach that ever played and had, been around for a while, they'll tell you, I mean, it's going to begin and end with defense, because your offense is going to come and go. And if you can bring the defense travels, offense doesn't sometimes. And so as long as they can kind of hang their hat on defense, man, they'll be in every game that they play. And they're going to give some people some fits, and I like the way that Richfield has played over the last couple of years, just really kind of aggressive, tenacious, quick, get after you. And so if they can just find a way to get the ball in the basket and maintain that defensive intensity, I think that's why people have got them pegged to win the conference.
I heard complaints from other fans from other schools last year at state, because I did the 1A D2 girls state tournament. They said, Richfield's just gimmicky. They do this, all out blitz on defense. And I after watching them play, it's not a gimmick. It's a style, and it's what they do, and they're really good at. I think their head coach, Buck Hendren, summed it up best in our season preview. He said, "We have a history of great defensive intensity, but we need to average more than the 35 points per game we averaged last year to be contenders." And I would agree. Offensively, their defensive prowess really masked a lot of their offensive problems last year. So that's the big question for me, is to compete on a state level, can their offense be a little bit better?
Yeah, and what Richfield's going to have to start doing is turning defense into offense. And I know they do this already, but, it does become a numbers game and a statistics game. It's one thing to get turnovers. It's another thing to do something with them, and so what you see a lot of times in basketball is you see these teams that create turnovers, but then they don't know how to score in the half court, but a team like Richfield or any team that predicates themselves on defense, you get the turnover and you get your butt up the floor and you run and you score in transition where you don't have to run a half court. Because if you can get a team to run a half court offense, every time down the floor, you're probably going to beat them, because it's just tough to score in a half court all the time. And that's what a defensive team will do for you, is they will get those turnovers. And if you're getting 5, 6, 7 layups a game on turnovers, I mean, think about that. I mean, there's 12, 14 points that are just given to you because you play good defense. Those are points in 7 possessions that you don't have to score in the half court, and that's why Richfield will always be in a game, because of their defense.
Richfield, we talked about, already has some impressive wins over Wendell, a 2A program, Rimrock, a 1A D1 school that is favored to win their conference. A close loss to Dietrich. So early on, Richfield looks like they're going to be right in the mix. Dietrich is the one team that has beaten Richfield so far this year. They were kind of a 500 team last year in both overall record and conference record. Rick Estelle is the head coach. He's been coaching a long time, and he's going to rely on Haley Estelle and Layla Von Berendt to lead that team. But Dietrich is kind of the mystery team to me because if they can improve their play, they could be a real factor.
Oh, they can. And Dietrich has the one thing that a lot of schools don't have, and they've got a pedigree. They've got a culture. And winning is something that just happens in Dietrich. Whether it's basketball, football, chess team, doesn't matter. It's Dietrich. And so they do bring a culture of winning, and especially when you've got Estelle that's been there for a while. They definitely have some experience in that area. So, yeah, Dietrich don't count them out. I know I just talked up Richfield, but, Dietrich had a little something to say about that earlier this year. So that could be a real fun conference.
Yes. Richfield 1, Carey 2, Dietrich 3 in the preseason coaches poll. Hanson was picked 4th in the preseason coaches poll, and you would look just on the surface and go, well, Hanson went 2-18 last year. How could they possibly be picked 4th in the preseason coaches poll? But if you listen to their head coach, Nick Gonzalez, he says, look, we barely had enough numbers last year. We had so many girls that were playing both JV and varsity. We'd get to the end of varsity games and we'd be gassed. We'd be totally spent. And he said, once the JV season ended and we could combine all of our efforts into varsity, he said, we really turned a corner. And I think it bore out in districts. They only lost by 5 in the game that ended their season. So depth is going to be the question for Hanson. They may struggle a bit through the regular season again, but I wouldn't want to play them at district time.
Yeah, and that's always been the thing with Hanson too, is numbers. I mean, we've had, years where they've had to co-op and the Murtaugh Hanson co-op and stuff like that. But Hanson's always had number issues. And, when you get down into the 1A level, you still have to put 5 on the floor, just like the 5As do. So it's not 3 versus 3. It's not 8-man football. You got to find 5 people, 5 bodies that can do it in a very physically demanding sport. And you see that a lot in these thin teams is they just run out of gas. And if you run out of gas all the time, then you kind of have a propensity for injury as well. And so there's a lot of things happening when you don't have numbers. And if Hanson can stay healthy and not battle numbers issues, I wouldn't count them out either, because obviously everybody else in the conference thinks they've got something there.
Speaking of schools with low numbers, Camas County, I talked about it, got to state for the second time ever in school history last year. They did it with just 7 players and really six players that really played. John Boats is a great coach, and we talked about the void that's going to be left by Kylie Wood, who's going to step up and win Conference Player of the Year. I think his daughter, Ashley Boats, could step right in, and she's going to be expected to carry the load offensively for a team, again, that's going to have very low numbers, and I could see Ashley putting up big numbers and winning the Conference Player of the Year.
Yeah, and she's going to have to. I mean, there's just no bones about it. She is going to have to be the gal to carry that team. And if she can't do it, then it may be a rough year. But, she's definitely a skillful player and definitely has the mentorship in front of her. So, yeah, she's really going to have a great year.
So Camas County only had 7 players last year. They lost their 2 starting posts to graduation, and a 3rd player moved to Washington. And Coach Boats knew that this player was moving to Washington when I talked to him before state last year. And so I was talking to him a little bit, and he said, we better savor this trip because we may not have enough players to even have a team next year. I said, Are you serious? He goes, I'm dead serious. Unless we get a couple of 8th graders that are going to be coming in as freshmen and get them to buy in, we may not have enough for a team. Now, he was able to get those younger players in, but he's only going to have about 7 players total in the program again. So you're talking about in practice, you're either having 5-on-3 with a couple of chairs or 5-on-3 with an assistant coach and his kid, his 10-year-old kid. You know what I'm talking about? The things that small schools go through.
Oh, yeah. And I've been there before. I mean, if you don't have the numbers, then, it changes the way that you coach, because you cannot do things that you would do if you had 10, 11, 12 people on your roster. And it makes practice dynamic a completely different animal, because you don't get a lot of that scrimmage time, that 5-on-5. I mean, it's a lot of drills. It's a lot of 3 versus 3, but it's not the same as 5-on-5. And so it is a different way to coach. And if you are coaching a team in basketball that doesn't have the numbers like that, boy, that is really, really challenging. And it makes for good coaches, because they are really going to have to do things differently.
Now, despite that, Camas County is 3-1. Their only loss came to Richfield, and they only lost 32-16. And I think that's probably where Richfield's aggressive style defensively just wore out Camas County, who didn't have players. But
yeah, no, for sure. And that is just kind of the epitome of what we were talking about earlier. Is just the defense for Richfield. But if you don't have the guns and you have a defensive team that is just harassing you all night, it does wear on you big time. So
that's going to be a fun conference. Castleford and Hagerman were picked 6th and 7th. I think more so because coaches just don't know much about those teams, and hopefully we learn more about those squads as we get going here in the season. But
yeah, and it's always fun to take these preseason rankings, and then at the end of the year go back and see how close everybody was, because that gives you an idea of what teams came together and matured, what teams had injury problems, because there's so many storylines are going to happen between now and February that this list of teams that we're looking at, it may not even be it may be flipped on its ear. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. So Scott, we just ran through pretty much every girls basketball team in the Magic Valley. Give me the one team that you are most excited to follow through the course of the season and kind of chart their progress. Give me one.
Golly, put me on the spot. I am looking forward to seeing what Burley does, just because of how do they handle a star player? Because I've seen so many times that you get a star player and everybody else just stands around and everybody else just waits until the star player passes them the ball. I've seen it 1,000 times. And I've also seen the star player try to do too much, and so I'm interested in following Burley and the dynamic that happens there, because Amari Whiting is obviously the best player on the floor, no matter, who she plays. But what are her teammates going to do? Are they going to get better? And what is Amari going to do to make them better? Because that's sometimes what a star forgets to do, is make their teammates better, because all of a sudden she's in foul trouble one game, or she tweaks an ankle, or whatever the case is. What has she taught her teammates to do, in her absence? And so that's why I'm interested, because to me, it's a little bit beyond the game, and that's why I'm interested in that one.
Okay, that's a good answer. I'm going to say Oakley, because they're a team that is trying to break through into the upper echelon of their league. And they've got, again, like I said, I think the real X factor in Peyton, their point guard, who missed all of last season. And so I'm gonna be intrigued to see how they do, because now the expectations are on, right? They haven't been picked to win in years past, and now all of a sudden they've tied for first in the preseason coaches poll. How do they handle that? Yeah. Being in a new spot. So Oakley is my team.
Okay. Well, I think there's a lot of teams up and down the conferences here in the Magic Valley that are going to be fun to watch, and some good storylines. And as we kind of move through the season, we'll be getting those storylines like we did in our football podcast and sharing them with our audience. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know we threw a lot at the listeners / viewers here in this first. We rattled off a lot of names from a lot of teams, but this hopefully will give you an idea of who to look out for when you're watching these games, whether it's on IdahoSports.com or in person. And hopefully we're able to give you some of that background info. So,
yep, absolutely. So excited for the basketball season and some pretty good podcasts coming our way.
Definitely. All right. Well, we'll do the exact same thing next week, except we'll talk boys basketball. A lot of teams are just opening their season this week. All of our previews will be up on IdahoSports.com. It'll give us a chance to really dive in and break down what's happening on the boys basketball scene. Sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast. Enjoy the games this week, everybody. For Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time as he loses his sunglasses at the very end here. We can finally see your eyes. We'll sign off there. I don't want to subject you to any more of this. So we'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.